Now joining us, Representative Jan Schakowsky from Illinois' 9th District. Representative Schakowsky, thanks for joining us again.
I'm happy to be with you. Thanks.
Let's talk about health care a little bit. We've got a lot of blue dog Democrats hitting television and the media saying, whoa, we got to slow down here. Now, we also saw an internal RNC memo that's been leaked that says the main talking point for the Republicans is slow down, and that's a good way to kill the bill. Why are these so-called conservative Democrats or blue dog Democrats following Republican memos?
Well, first of all, let me say there aren't a whole lot of them. There's enough on our committee that if they were all to stick together, they could take responsibility for killing health care, but I don't think that's going to happen. There are pretty successful negotiations going on with them right now, but they also need to understand that actually 82 members of the House, Democrats, have said they will not vote for any plan that does not have a robust, that's the word of the day, robust public health insurance option for people to choose from. So I am actually, after meeting with Henry Waxman, the chairman of the committee, who was at the White House with the Blue Dogs, I feel more optimistic right now that actually we're going to get there. But why do we need to move now? Because this is the moment of opportunity. They don't come along all that often when we can actually move an agenda and to not go with the momentum that we have right now means that we may not be able to pick it up again. And that's exactly what the Republicans want us to do.
And in the House, is there anything that's holding it up, or do you think if you had a vote today that it would pass today?
Well, we have, I think there's going to be a couple of changes to the bill that deal with reducing some of the waste. That's a good thing. That's currently in the system, so I think there'll be some constructive changes. But frankly, I know when we call the vote, which will, I believe, still be on schedule next week, that there will be the votes in the House to pass this historic legislation. I think sometimes, we get lost in the trees and forget about the forest. I mean, just the one thing alone of saying to the American people, you will never have to worry about being excluded for some pre-existing condition. It's just huge. And it's just, for so many years, we've had to put up with that. And as you get older, it's pretty hard not to have had a pre-existing condition.
Well, I hear you on that. So I want to run something by you that Tom Coburn, senator from Oklahoma, said earlier today on Morning Joe. He said maybe we should have some sort of cost provision in there that connects the patient to the cost of the medical care a little bit better so that we could rein in some of the costs. So we don't have as many tests because then the patient's going to be a little bit more careful about it, and then the doctor isn't incentivized to order more and more tests.
As if patients are the ones that order health care. You go to a doctor and a doctor says, something looks suspicious. We better check out your colon. Are you going to say, no, doctor, I don't want that expense, even though you think in your best judgment that that's what we should do? Or your doctor gives you a prescription and you say, oh, no, I don't think so. I'm not gonna do that. I mean, the reason we go to a doctor is because they are the professionals. They are driving what you do as a patient. And the other thing is, it's as if to say, well, honey, I got a raise, now I can afford to get cancer. People don't choose the time when they or the amount that it's going to cost. It's not like at a Chinese restaurant, I think I'll have a broken leg instead of diabetes. Things happen to you, and we're the only country in the world, industrialized country anyway, that doesn't see health care as a right for its citizens.
No, I understand that, but some people would legitimately say the way we have it set up under Medicare, we are incentivizing overcharging by doctors.
Oh, by doctors, yeah.
So how do we get that under control? I mean, Coburn is saying maybe we get that under control if the patient has to pay a small percentage of it. I don't know if that's the right way to go, but it is a legitimate question.
No, I think the question is legitimate, but the answer is brutal. To say then that the patient should pay the burden of a doctor perhaps doing self-referral because he happens to own an MRI machine or something, no, that's ridiculous. I think that we want to look at utilization and make sure that we prevent the kinds of abuses that go on in some places, and we are setting up mechanisms to do exactly that. We know that in certain communities or perhaps in certain hospitals or in certain doctor practices that per person they're costing Medicare twice as much as in other places. And that's going to trigger, we're going to be looking much more carefully at that and figure out how to reward proper utilization and how to penalize overutilization. But it's certainly not going to be based on the patient having to pay for it. Maybe the doctor, but not the patient.
All right. We're talking to Representative Jan Schakowsky from Illinois' 9th District. I want to move on to another conservative criticism, which is, hey, we have the best system in the healthcare system in the world. Now, you don't have to answer that part. I know we don't, and that's a false talking point. We're ranked 37th, not number 1. But we do have we are very good at the high end, right? And that's why we will get a lot of people coming from outside the country, kings and presidents, et cetera, and rich folks to get our services. Now, I wonder if there is a legitimate point that if you do the public option and it works really well, that it does kill off some of the private insurance companies in the country, and whether that winds up affecting the high-end market in this country for medical care.
Oh, certainly. Well, to answer the last question, certainly not. Look, right now there are the average CEO of the largest insurance companies make about $12 million a year. Really not particularly necessary. Plus, they hire people to sit there and deny coverage. I'm not talking doctors now. I'm talking about the people at insurance companies who want to make sure that all costs are avoided in terms of paying out. They want to collect their premiums, but they want to deny coverage to people. We have testimony from a woman whose whole policy was canceled back to the day that she first signed it because she got cancer, and they, figured out how they wouldn't pay for it. And so the insurance companies, will they have to change their ways in order to participate? Yes. Is that a good thing? Yes. They have had their way with us for decades now, and we're in a mess and in a crisis right now. And so I'm sorry, the insurance companies are finally going to have to compete. They're exempt from antitrust laws right now. They can basically declare markets and include on prices, and the AMA says 94% of the markets in the United States are non-competitive. So will they have to compete with a private plan? Yes. And might prices come down a bit? Yes. But will they be able to do it? I think it's an unequivocal yes.
The conservatives would then argue if you have a public option, it's going to be an insurance policy, and obviously it's not going to cover everything. It's not going to cover elective plastic surgery, for example, an obvious case, etc. So then the government will be deciding if it kills off the other private insurance companies, what will be covered for you and won't. What's your response to that?
Well, actually, there's going to be a number of levels of a plan, including a gold plan that will be able to cover all kinds of things. But let's be clear, surgeries like cosmetic surgery generally are not covered by any plan. That kind of elective surgery is considered a luxury, and people pay out of pocket. And so don't kid yourself. People who have a lot of money are still going to do all kinds of cosmetic surgery. I wouldn't worry about those doctors because they're paid by out-of-pocket expenses anyway.
We're talking to Representative Jan Schakowsky from Illinois' 9th District. Representative, I want to move on to the politics of it now. So in the House, you seem fairly comfortable they're going to pass. You don't seem too concerned about the Blue Dogs rebellion, if you will.
Well, I think that we're going to make some accommodations for a number of different groups in the House, but yeah, I do because I feel confident because we have a real organized. People understand healthcare in a very personal way, and they are organized this time to fight for reform in healthcare. So it's not just what happens inside the Congress, it's what happens outside the Congress. Your listeners need to be communicating with their members of Congress that they want real healthcare reform so that they can get their health care. So that's why I'm optimistic. But go ahead.
So point one is that it looks like we're going to get something out of the House and that it is going to include a robust public option. Point two is when. When do you think we will have that vote?
Well, I think we could have a vote. We're expecting a vote in the House next week. The Senate, we'll see. They're staying in a week longer than we are before they go on break in August. It's possible that they will get their bill done as well, and then there'll be time when we come back after the August recess to conference the bill, where the House and the Senate get together and try and resolve some of the differences. And so I think at the end of the day, given the tremendous involvement of the President of the United States and all his resources, and Organizing for America and Healthcare for America Now, all the groups that are organizing, I think we'll have a bill signed by the fall.
And point number three, you mentioned the Senate there, and of course the Senate is critical to this. And you mentioned people, reaching out to their congressmen or their senators. What can people do to influence those about 8 senators that are in the Democratic caucus that don't seem to have fully signed on to the idea of the public option yet? Because they're the key to everything. Because if it passes the House, they're the main stumbling block. And it looks like they're honestly getting paid by the health insurance companies. I know you guys are hamstrung a little bit in pointing that out because they're in your own party. But what can we do to motivate them in the right direction?
Well, exactly what you said. I mean, I think people have to call them, particularly those from the district, and say, my vote next time is going to depend on how you vote this time. But let me give you an example. Young Turk, you're too young to remember this, but in 1989, I was director of a group called the Illinois State Council of Senior Citizens. It was an affiliate of a national organization, and that year, all the smarty pants inside the Beltway, including the groups like AARP and the National Council of Senior Citizens and all the Democrats, came up with a bill called the Catastrophic Health Care Bill. This was a Medicare so-called improvement. Well, everybody agreed to it. They thought it was a great idea, except for the seniors themselves, the people on Medicare. They took pen to paper and realized, I'm going to be paying the highest effective tax rate of any American, and I don't want the package that they're offering. I don't just want catastrophic. I want long-term care. It's not in there. I want eyeglasses and hearing aids. It's not in there. Well, Dan Schakowsky was the chairman of the powerful House Ways and Means Committee, and he came to my group to talk about the bill, just with a few leaders. Well, when he got up to leave that small meeting, 200 other seniors who were waiting to get the report walked out, and I didn't organize this part. They chased him down the street, into his car, surrounded the car, pounding on it, and saying, we don't like this bill. 3 months later, that bill was repealed because all over the country, people rebelled against it. They didn't like the plan that was passed. Well, if people the members of Congress need to know, people are really mad about the current health care situation. They're not going to take it. And I don't know if they'll chase their congressman or senator down the street, but they're going to make their unhappiness known at the ballot box. And by the way, it was the beginning of the end for Dan Schakowsky. He did eventually get defeated, as powerful as he was.
Yep. And we are out of time, but that is a powerful story to end on. Representative Schakowsky, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Yep.